All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ASAP in the Morning. It is Wednesday, November 16th. We are 10:07 on the East Coast. I am your host, Craig Campbell, along with my co-host, Ray Cruz. Ray, good morning, buddy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's been cold, rainy here, this morning. Got up at 2:30, went out in Uber till about 7, got my kids to school, come back here, rest a little bit, got cleaned up and got ready for this show.
Nice. I know I have been a little MIA for the last week. We had the storm, had some things go on at work, but hey, we got some upgrades. You notice you see a little bit more of my background here. We got a new camera, so we're feeling good. We're feeling good today. But hey, let us know, everybody, how you're doing this morning. Got a few people tuning in. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and of course live on the Roku app, Fox D Network, and Tiki Live. So check us out on all those platforms. And if you want to catch all the greatest content from All Sports All Plays Network, including Ray with Jags Nation, College Football Breakdown, and a plethora of other stuff that he's involved with here at the All Sports All Plays Network, you got to follow us on social media. You can find us on all the major platforms. On YouTube, search ASAP Sports Network. On Facebook, at All Sports All Plays. On Twitter, at ASAP Network 1. And on Twitch, at ASAP Network. Hit the like, the share, the subscribe, the comment button. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so thank you to everybody that tunes in and subscribes on YouTube. But yeah, check us out there. You can also, if you want to help us out, you can send stars on Facebook. That helps us earn money, helps the network. It helps us with our content creation. If you want to find the spicy videos, Mike Hughes, you got to pay for that. You got to pay extra for that. That's on the ASAP OnlyFans network. Oh, I shouldn't have said. I'm just kidding. We don't care. Yeah, you can check us out. You can help us out. Support the show. Support the network. It helps us out tremendously. But check us out on all those different social media platforms as well. Mike says he's game. He's game. I guess I know you guys were talking earlier this week. There's a lot of really, that's a good idea for it. ASAP Plus. I think that's a really good idea for the new app for the ASAP network. So this weekend in NFL, we got a lot of great stuff we're going to talk about today. NFL, power rankings, college football playoff. We might talk about some NBA and some college basketball and some baseball news. Lots of stuff going on all in the month of November. But I think the first thing we want to talk about, I know you guys talked about this a little bit yesterday with the Eagles and the Commanders losing on Monday Night Football. Eagles took down their first loss of the season, I guess kind of in a different way. Did the Commanders expose the Eagles on Monday Night Football? Like, did they show a way that you can beat the Eagles now? In your opinion? They
show a way that anybody can beat anybody on NFL. It's just that pro level football. But did they expose them? Yeah, I think they exposed certain things, but also you got to the performance by the Eagles helped themselves in this one. I mean, by a little bit of all those turnovers they had, they cashed in on them. That's when your team is 3-6 and you come in, you got to cash on the 4 and 5. When they come in at 4 and 5 and they cash in all the turnovers into points, that's how you beat these teams that are undefeated. But also, there's a part of a lot of pressure on the Eagles too, with them being undefeated, the last team being undefeated. You still got that myth of the 1972 Dolphins out there, So I mean, it's hard to go undefeated. I mean, Brady went undefeated all the way up to the Super Bowl and lost the Super Bowl. So I mean, you got a lot of pressure on teams like that. But did they expose to them? In certain ways, yes. I mean, certain ways, Jaguars exposed to the Eagles too, to a certain point. until they started messing up and they forced their turnovers. So, I mean, don't forget the Jaguars were up 21-0 on the Eagles and came back on one. But did they expose them? I think every team exposed every team. I mean, it's just the title players. But you're playing in the division, there's what? Win percentage is over 70% of the win. They win 70% of the time. And the Commanders were the last totem pole at below 500. Now they have 500. So they got every team in the NFC East at 500. So that's going to come down to the wire now. The Cowboys are back with Giants are back within one game. Cowboys are back within one game. So, I mean, it's going to be a race to the finish now because if you look at what I set out yesterday, I set out a game plan for the Eagles. Got to watch out because the Commanders, they got to watch out. They're right there. So is the Giants because if you look at the Giants, they got to play the Eagles twice.
Mm-hmm. They have not played yet.
Yeah, they play them twice. So, I mean, if the Giants keep winning, they set themselves up pretty good because they'll play first at Lincoln Financial, and then they'll go back home and play them in MetLife Stadium. So, I mean, they're set. The Giants are set pretty. Cowboys got one more game with the Eagles. So, We'll see how that goes. We know the Cowboys lost to the Packers. So, I mean, the Eagles. I mean, if you put pressure on Jalen Hurts, keep him in the pocket, make him be a pocket passer, which the Commanders did without Chase Young. If you got good pass rushers and they still keep him in the box and you put pressure on him all game, I mean, you can destroy Jalen Hurts unless he gets out and starts running again.
Yeah, I think that's you kind of touched on a little bit. I think the Commanders they exposed a little bit of the formula on how to beat the Eagles. And when you're the Eagles, the biggest asset that you've had so far is you've been able to run the football. You haven't had to rely on Jalen Hurts to really open it up. Like he's not going to be like a Josh Allen where they're going to ask him to throw 40, 50 times a game, 50 plus times a game. That's not where Jalen Hurts is. He's capable of doing it, but I think the biggest thing that was shown, which is probably one of the hardest things that teams have tried to figure out this year, is how do you stop the run? And I think that's what the Commanders showed because they had less than 100 yards. I mean, Jalen Hurts was fairly effective on the ground, 6 carries, 25 yards and touchdown. But for them to also contain guys like Miles Sanders and Gainwell and Scott, to contain them throughout the entirety of the game, I think that's probably the biggest factor is not only did they contain the run, but the Commanders dominated time of possession. They had over 40 minutes time of possession and the Eagles had under 20 at 19 and change. So not only are you containing the run, you're not allowing them to stay in long drives, which keeps their defense fresh. You're on offense as the Commanders, you're able to keep the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, to keep the ball out of the Eagles' offense's hands. And that's a recipe for, like you mentioned, it's a recipe for any team. But the Commanders, for whatever reason, they were able to actually succeed because we've seen, you mentioned the Jaguars were up. The Lions made a big comeback in week 1 that made that game interesting. The Eagles have had some close games. So I think for moving forward, the Eagles, this is probably a very big sigh of relief for them because the further you get into a season and you're undefeated, the harder that pressure is. Like the bigger that pressure gets. So now that, okay, we're 8-0, great start, one of the best starts in franchise history, if not the best. And all right, we took a loss. Let's go back to the drawing board. Now that pressure's off them that they don't have to go undefeated. Now you just got to go out there and keep doing what you do best. Run the football, get to the quarterback, and allow Jalen Hurts to go out and make plays. And now it's just try to win your division, because if you win your division, you're likely going to be in that conversation for the top seed in the NFC. So that'll be the next step for the Eagles. They didn't necessarily get entirely exposed. I agree with you. But they definitely the Commanders showed a recipe for how to beat the Eagles. It's one thing to show the recipe, it's another thing to actually execute on that. So I think that's one thing that the Eagles are going to have to pay attention to, is other teams are going to take note that what the Commanders did on Monday Night Football. And then the other teams will try to utilize that in their own games. And you mentioned how tight the NFC East race is. It's outside of the AFC East, just the entire East Coast right now in the NFL. They have the two best divisions in football in the standings. So it's going to be a tight race the rest of the way for the Eagles. Because now next coming up, you got Indy on the road, who's been a surprise last week with Jeff Saturday in his first ever head coaching debut.
And Bill Cowher's rant on that.
Yeah, Bill Cowher. A lot of people have made comments about the validity of Jeff Saturday's hire. But hey, when you come out in your first game and you say, all right, we're gonna make this change. We're gonna have this guy call the plays. We're gonna put Matt Ryan back at quarterback, and this is what we're gonna do. And then you go out and do it, and you win a game. That speaks a lot of volumes too. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Eagles still have, like you mentioned, they play the Giants twice. They play the Cowboys. They still have to play the Titans, who have been really good. Green Bay actually got a win this last weekend. That was nice for them. They've been so bad. And the Bears as well. The Bears play tough defense. They run the football. They can control the clock. That'll be an interesting game, I think. I don't think that'll be a complete blowout. And then you've got the Saints. So you still have some tough games ahead. So if you're the Eagles, you've got to now make adjustments. That pressure's off you. You don't have to go undefeated. And I don't think if you are the Eagles, I don't think that you were expecting to go undefeated anyway, because you still got a few tough games left on your schedule. And with that, hey, we're going to bring Mike Hughes in. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm okay. I don't sleep. College. I'm in the long stretch. I'm almost there.
Mike's awake. Mike's awake here.
He's
with us.
We're here.
Yes, yeah, college life is getting to me, you know.
But it is. Yeah, I can tell. Tank top.
Two college guys. Ray doesn't normally that scruffy.
Ray's rocking.
This is no shave November. So, you know.
Yeah, Ray's rocking it. That's for sure.
I'm doing a different November trend, Craig.
A different November trend.
I made a bet with Dre Montez saying that he believes I was naturally bald. I said, no, I can grow a head full of hair. So that's what I'm doing.
I seen pictures of Ray's hair. He can grow hair. I can't confirm.
So, Mike, Eagles.
Sup, Craig?
They finally lose to the Commanders. They got their first loss of the season, Monday Night Football.
Yes, sir. Tay-Town.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke. He looks like he could be the guy at quarterback for the Commanders.
Ben knowing that shit. Like, what
right,
I don't even understand the Carson
Mike knows that.
or the Sam Howell draft. And I was just like, you know what?
Mike's been saying that. He's been saying Tay-Town is the answer. So for the Eagles, we were discussing, did the Eagles get exposed on Monday Night Football by the Commanders?
I think there's a lot of levels to a lot of things, and that's a very cop-out answer. But I mean, I saw Ray say it at the very beginning, on any given Sunday, and in this case, it was a Monday night. But really, I don't see you getting exposed. They put up 21 points. From what? Maybe I missed the game. Actually, I'm gonna look at the stat sheet before I say it.
Well, I can tell you this.
Chase Young's not back. Chase Young's not back, right?
No.
So yeah, it wasn't great. You know what I mean? Like I could respect you losing to a guy like Chase Young and what that defense was. But, you look at it for what it is. Taylor Heineke balls out. He only throws 211 yards. They put up 32 points. He didn't throw a single touchdown. He is him, but he just does it with wins. He doesn't care about the stats. That's how I believe about Tay-Town. Brian Robinson had a great day. Gibson had a great day. And everybody else pretty much just got beat by the defense. I mean, that's what it was. Your defense scores points in the NFL. Your kicking unit. I mean, if you had the Washington kicking unit in this game, you were having yourself a day. I had Cairo Santos, who decided he wanted to miss a game-winning field goal, or a game-tying field goal. But whatever, I digress. And it's definitely something, you look at Jalen Hurts' side of it. You want this MVP caliber type season. You throw 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, 17 for 26. And you're like, the fuck are we doing? And then, as a Bears fan, when I see lack of production from passing yards, I go, oh, maybe Justin Fields just broke Michael Vick's record again, because we do that every single Sunday. We don't win games, but we break records. But you look at it, and Miles Sanders leads the team with 54 rushes, and 54 yards and 12 rushes. And you're like, what was the identity of this team? What was going on? And AJ Brown leaves that game early, so that you understand, like, there's a lot that goes into that. He's why I lost in fantasy this week, 1.7 points. Shout out AJ Brown. But Craig, to answer your question, no, I don't think they got exposed. I just think you played 8 weeks of great football, and it's the word exposed to me is like, okay, you're frauds, you're fraudulent. The rest of the season went down the shitter. You lost 1 game, you're 8-1. So I mean, it happens. It happens to the best of us. For me, it happens every Sunday. So, it's definitely something they shouldn't be taking too hard to the chin right now. It is unfortunate that is a division game. I know that one would definitely hurt. And I know Washington fans, if they are out there, are definitely going to be talking about it for a long time if this is the only loss all season.
Yeah, but then also you got to think about too is that to talk about face masks. Is that a stat or no? That's why I asked. Yeah, he did. The dude tackled him with a face mask. The referee was actually looking at him, because I went back and looked at the play from the end zone view.
I'll tell you what.
And he's sitting there looking at it, and the dude gets tackled by his face. And then you got Aaron Rodgers come out and say, NFL's thinking about player safety. And they didn't want to think about player safety there.
I'll tell you what, maybe I'm throwing shade at the host of this show, but Jalen Johnson got called for a face mask that I didn't see. But that's could have won the game right there. I saw Aiden Hutchinson RKO Justin Fields and nothing. But it's I digress.
When he performs the RKO and runs around and grabs him by the shoulder pads and then throws him around, that's
my man. Nah, don't
not.
See, that's what I hate. I hate when guys defend players and they go, "Oh, he grabbed him by the shoulder pad." That was neck, sir. That was neck. That was up close and personal. Feeling his jugular.
I will not confirm nor deny that. There's definitely calls that could go either way, especially.
Definitely.
I couldn't tell you how many times throughout the beginning of the season. I don't know. I know Aiden Hutchinson's got to. He's a good rookie, but he's got to get a lot better. He's got to learn more in his repertoire. He's got to be able to perform more moves, but he gets held more than I see any other defensive lineman for the Lions all season. And they don't.
You know what that is for me, and I mean this in a respectful way. It's the Chase Young effect. I truly do believe that, where it was like, well, he's just a rookie, doesn't really matter. And then to stand by that, if you're not a Washington fan, it's the Micah Parsons effect as well. You look at these rookies coming into the game and how it completely changes everything. And I know, Craig, he's not on the same level, but there's a rookie over there, Jack Sanborn on the Bears right now, where Jared Goff's over here not taking it seriously, and Jack Sanborn has a career game with Roquan Smith being out. So these rookies are coming a very far way in their development. I felt like that was always Aiden's issue, was kind of channeling that raw dog in him, and I think sometimes he's very passionate, and sometimes when you're very passionate, you're gonna get a couple yellow flags pulled on you. So I mean, I think it'll all come in time. Yeah,
and you were kind of mentioning about Ray about the face mask penalties and stuff in the Monday night game. I think one of the things that also, obviously that controversial late hit call when Heineke gives himself up, nails down, and then a couple of Eagles come in and then they throw a flag. Heineke gets up knowing immediately what's about to be called, which essentially that puts the game away.
Yeah.
I don't know, like what were your guys' thoughts on how that whole thing played out?
To me, well, first of all, there's two incidents. The one they called on the sideline, that late hit on the sideline, the dude's foot was still in bounds when dude hit him. That wasn't a late hit. They just called a penalty as a late hit. I went back and looked at the replay on that. And then the one with him catching the football and was getting back up, if you go back, the ESPN didn't show it to you. So the NFL Network, NFL Plus, I get the end zone view of everything, the coach's view, and it shows the dude hitting him when he was about to get back up, touches him, and he should have been called down, and he fumbles the ball again. So you had some plays right there that they didn't call, and they didn't even go back and look at that turnover play.
Definitely.
So.
Craig missed that one.
I
did not have a chance to watch a ton of this game, so I definitely had to.
That's how I know he missed it, right? Because
he
didn't even see what I did. He didn't even see what I did. But it's all right.
I was preparing for the next
24-18. Go back after the show, Craig. That was for you. But I hope
24-18. All right.
24-18.
And then, Mike, I got to give you thanks for Justin Fields because I got 70 points on my fantasy football with him. So
70.
Yes, sir. He's doing his thing. He was my late waiver wire pickup. I mean, I was trying not to because I was so biased. I tried not taking any Bears players. Somehow I ended up with Montgomery on every single one of my fucking fantasy teams. I don't know how that happened, but
I got Montgomery and Herbert, so I get it.
Yeah, Herbs is out now for a whole month. That's going to be really unfortunate, but it's something I look at with Justin Fields and the emergence of that. Not to get too deep into it, but it's a beautiful thing to watch. And my first time, really any fan's first time, really having a Bears quarterback where you're like, whoa, this is the best Bears quarterback we've ever seen. And I could safely say that. I feel that way. And I think, you look at it for what it is. Name me one guy who's going tick for tack with Justin Fields from an athletic perspective that was a quarterback of the Bears. It's just not happening. It's not. I don't want to hear it. I see a lot of people in the comments. He is him. H1M.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing, as you mentioned, that compared to other Bears quarterbacks, Justin Fields is not like any other quarterback that the Bears have had.
Never.
Like
ever.
You could say
somebody said Mitchell Trubisky, and I was like, no, stop. Like he's not. He's not. Mitch was an athletic white guy, and that was about it. It doesn't mean he's a purebred athlete. It doesn't mean he's a man amongst boys. He was just all right. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's also I want to point out. Let's remember the students that got killed up in Idaho at University on the shooting up there. There's another shooting on the near the university campus. 4 killed. They call it a passion. They call it a murder of passion. That's what they're calling it. So,
man, between that and then the University of Virginia players,
their last home game has been canceled this weekend. They canceled the game. Coastal Carolina and them came for an agreement and said they would go ahead and honor the cancellation. So,
yeah. I mean, it's been wild stuff going on out there. That's absolutely for sure. All right, so one of the next, I guess, looking forward now to this next week, you've got Thursday night football, Tennessee and Green Bay. Tennessee is, there was a lot of conversation even on this show about how good or not Tennessee was going to be compared to the rest of the teams in their division. Here they are, 6-3, top of the division, between Ryan Tannehill and now Malik Willis at quarterback. They're sitting top of the division. Then you got Green Bay, which finally got a win this last weekend. They beat the Cowboys at home. So now they're sitting at 4-6. Have the Packers finally kind of figured it out this last weekend against the Cowboys? Like, is this a point where we can look and say, all right, the Packers now are kind of turning the corner and they're going to be able to string a few wins together, or was that just a one-off scenario and they're going to get stomped by Tennessee tomorrow night?
I think Christian Watson is the one that figured it out. I think that was the main problem. The Packers are going to remain a constant and remain who they are. Anthony Price said, I'm not saying that out loud. You will not clip me, sir. But it's definitely, you know, something I feel like Christian Watson has been struggling so much throughout his early NFL career with drops and a bunch of other issues that he's just not been in the right place at the right time. I watched this man get snapped with the ball because he was running this option. This sweep jet motion, and he just gets hit in the ass with the football, and it's a fumble. And he was just having a really rough go. And I know because I had him in fantasy, and I thought, hey, Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. Everything's going to be fine. And it wasn't. So I dropped him, and now he's great. But he had 3 touchdowns, 4 receptions, and over 100 yards last game. A big part of that is just beating your man. It really wasn't, you know, these short route designs. It was really just one-on-one deep balls. And, you know, you got a guy like Diggs on the Dallas Cowboys who is king of getting beat. So, I mean, it's definitely something, you know, you look at that Dallas secondary, especially with Mike McCarthy, and you know damn well how Aaron Rodgers feels about that situation. You know, it was definitely a telltale sign that, you know, Green Bay, at least in my opinion, was going to win this game. That's just how I felt about it. I'm also not a Dak truther. I saw earlier someone said Dak was a franchise quarterback, and I was very excited to come on this show and say that. But I digress. Again, Craig, I digress. I'm choosing the high road today. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, they still are who they are. Your wide receiver 1 is a rookie wide receiver who has struggled the first 10 plus weeks of the season. He had 1 good game. So I think, you know, you really need to take that into a sample size. It's going to be interesting to see, you know, an Odell Beckham Jr. situation to me. If you bring in an Odell on top of Christian Watson, on top of Sammy Watkins, got a lot of Watkins, but, you know, I really think this team could be solid if they bring in a guy like OBJ. But I saw the list, and I think OBJ probably ends up going somewhere else. But I still have him going to the Vikings, Craig. I don't know about you.
I think OBJ is going to wait as long as he needs to, and he will go to a team that he thinks is going to give him the best chance for a ring. Now, I honestly believe that I tend to agree with you. I think that's one team that's got to be on his short list.
Come on, Craig. You don't want to play with that, Craig? Come on, Craig.
That's a little bit of a sneak preview. I think we're talking about power rankings. I want to get your guys' top 5 for what you have from to this point of the season for power rankings. But Ray, so to you now, Titans, Packers tomorrow night. Was this last weekend for the Packers against the Cowboys? Was that an anomaly by the Packers, or is that something we can expect moving forward? And are they going to kind of turn it around now? So for Thursday Night Football, what are you kind of expecting to see?
I'm kind of expecting to see the same thing, the same game plan type deal that Green Bay Packers had against the Cowboys. A little bit different meat here, but now you got the defense for the Green Bay has got to worry about Derrick Henry. You know, Henry has got 202 carries for 923 yards and 9 touchdowns. So you got to figure out how to stop him. So are you going to put 8 men in the box? Are you going to go one-on-one with the wide receivers out there? You going to make Tannehill beat you? You know, that's going to be the question there. But then again, what does Tennessee have to do? Are they gonna blitz? Can they get to Rodgers on the 4-man front? Will Rodgers be getting chased? Will the offensive line keep him up? Will the wide receivers come back and help him when he gets in trouble? You know, all that stuff has got to factor in because, like you said, you still got rookie wide receiver. You still got Lazard out there who's been for Green Bay for a while. So him and Rodgers should know that there are same tendencies there. But when you have other mixing with Sammy Watkins, who's, you know, hasn't been there for a full year yet, you know, you got to get their tendencies. You got to tell them in practice and say, look, if I get in trouble, y'all need to come back so I can get open somewhere in the field. You got to break your routes off. You got to help me. So that's going to be the thing. But also with Tennessee is if you see what they did to Kansas City and Mahomes for 3.5 quarters, they kind of kept them in the pocket, kind of shut them down with the up front. But then the question is going to be the depth of the Tennessee Titans. Their depth is, and the defensive side is, people play a lot of snaps. So if you get the running game going against them, and say Jones has got 131 carries for 738 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he can get Jones going, that's going to alleviate a lot of pressure off of Rodgers and making them have to go 8 men in the box. So one thing is you got to work on the running game. You got to get your running game going. Get Rodgers in a rhythm. Get that wide receivers in a rhythm. Throw some short rhythm passes. 5 yards. If they play him 10 yards off or 5 yards off, run a slant. Get some easy completions. That's going to be the key of these games here for Green Bay. You got to get the receivers comfortable in the game. And the way to get the receivers comfortable in the game is throwing short passes, get them in rhythm, get them quickly, and then have Jones run the ball. If they can do all that against Tennessee, then Green Bay could win. But if Tennessee does what they did against Kansas City the whole entire game, they're not going to be able to, because they only played 3.5 quarters against Tennessee, against Kansas City when Mahomes took over. So, they got to play a full game. And if they play a full game like they did at 3.5 quarters in Kansas City, they have a good shot beating Green Bay at Green Bay.
I also feel like, Craig, you and I can attest to it because we've seen him a lot more. But A.J. Dillon has just not had the season that a lot of people expected him to have. He's only had 1 rushing touchdown so far this year. 454 yards and only 111 snaps or carries, pardon me. So, I look at it like that, and I think that definitely was a big difference maker for me going into the season. I really expected it to be kind of like the Cleveland Browns or even the Chicago Bears with Justin Fields, David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert. You got Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Like, I expected that 1-2 punch between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones together. Both A.J.'s, I was excited about it. I thought they were going to go crazy. Whether you had both of them on fantasy, I thought it was going to be huge, but really, neither of them has really performed the way we expected to. And I think obviously Aaron Jones, pardon me, has been a lot better than A.J. Dillon, but it's something, I think they just need an identity. I think they need an identity. Yeah. Robert Tonyan is a top 10 tight end in this league, and he is not utilized at all for the majority of the time. So, Christian Watson, is he or Jamar Chase? Justin Jefferson as a rookie? No. So I think, expecting him to be that is something that's really frustrating Packers fans right now because they're looking for that Devontae Adams replacement. And it's completely understandable, especially as a Bears fan. I'm looking at this defense right now, giving up 30 to damn near everybody in the league. And I'm just like, hey, where's the monsters of the midway? Because that's what you expect. And with the Packers, it's where's Devontae Adams? And I understand that. It definitely makes sense. They've got a banged-up O-line. They got a banged-up defense, underperforming defense, which has kind of been a telltale sign. They've put a lot of money into that defense. But I still think at the end of the day, they need to find their identity because you can't say it's Aaron Rodgers because I feel like Aaron Rodgers' self-identity changes every other month as well. So whatever the moon rocks tell you to do, he's doing. So I don't know. I think – I don't like saying this because I do believe he can be a good quarterback. But if you can make Malik Willis, if he's potentially QB1, I don't know how. I don't really follow Tennessee, so I don't know the situation. But if Malik Willis is QB1, if you can make him be an actual quarterback, I think you can win this game. And the reason I say that, and I don't want anybody to think I think he's a running back because I've heard those narratives. I don't think he's a better wide receiver. I've heard a lot of people talking about a lot of things, and I think that's just racism throughout the NFL. But I do believe that he has one of the biggest issues in reading a defense. I believe he has the arm. I believe he has the talent. He has the ball placement skills. I just think he can't really read an NFL defense right now. So when you have Adrian Amos, Alexander, Douglas, who ever since getting traded from the Arizona Cardinals looks like one of the best corners in the league. You have all these different guys, and you can definitely hit on that and understand that. So they're going to run the ball heavy, and you just got to be able to stop Derrick Henry, which obviously Ray alluded to. That is good luck, and you pray that he has an off day because there ain't shit you gonna do. Like that's what it is.
Yeah, I sit here and watch Derrick Henry play in high school football here in Yulee, Florida, right up the street from me. That dude was dragging people left and right in high school. Did it in college too. then you got to look at him now in pros. He's still doing the same thing he did there. But you also got to look too. You say Willis is part not going to play. Tannehill's back. Tannehill played last week, so
Oh, even better for the Packers defense because Ryan Tannehill is dog shit. Pride, you can at me. I don't care. At Prideful Takes.
I think you guys touched on a few things, and I think from the Packers' perspective,
Right.
what they did against Dallas, they averaged over 5 yards a carry. They had over 200 yards rushing, and Aaron Rodgers only threw the ball 20 times. That recipe right there is something that I think not only Aaron Rodgers has been kind of looking for,
Right.
but what LaFleur has been looking for ever since he got here. How much more did they focus on the run, trying to get Aaron Jones involved? And then you got AJ Dillon. And that's why in the conversation leading into this year, you're talking about a two-headed monster. It hasn't played out that way, but still Aaron Jones, 138 yards and a touchdown against Dallas. And when you have guys that can now like catch the ball in spots, like Watson had a huge game, but he only had 4 catches, but still that's the thing that this team has kind of been missing, is that cohesion between Rodgers and the wide receiver core, because LaFleur wants to run the football a lot more often. And that's, I think, that the identity, I'm not saying that it means that they can win at home against Tennessee, because Derrick Henry is way different than Tony Pollard, and Zeke wasn't even playing because he's still out. But Zeke Elliott, or I should say Tony Pollard against Derrick Henry, is 2 completely different monsters.
No, definitely. And I think, you hit it on the head. You throw over a little bit over 200 yards, 50% of that in 20 completions, or it was 20 attempts, 4 of them are over 100 yards off of Christian Watson alone. And that's the identity. That was what the identity in recent years was chop it up to Devontae Adams. That's when they looked like the best versions of themselves. That looks like the Packers of old, because they're actually able to do that. Now, is Christian Watson, going to be able to catch the ball at a consistent rate? And it comes in time. So I'm not saying he can't catch. Right. You know how big of a Christian Watson fan I was. I did not like that they had Christian Watson. I just felt like it, throughout the first couple of weeks, I had to humble myself and was like, okay, he's going through growing pains. It's not a Jamar Chase effect where, preseason people are wondering if he can even catch a football, and then he comes out and has one of the greatest seasons ever. But it's something, you look at it and you think, all right, so you got a great week, but what are you doing moving forward? Are you going to be able to rely on Christian Watson, 1, to be healthy, and 2, to be that guy night in and night out? 4 receptions, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's not going to happen on a week in and week out basis. And if it does, all power. I'm not a hater. I'm a Bears fan, but I'm not a hater. All power to you if you get that in a rookie. I wish we had that. But it's definitely something, I saw George Pickens have a hell of a performance early on in the season, and the rest of the season it's just George Pickens. So, I think guys are going to come in strides. Rookies come in waves, unless you're an anomaly. JJ does, obviously Jamar Chase, a couple other guys, but more so than not, I think they're still going to have this identity crisis, and a big part of that is AJ Dillon. And you mentioned it with Zeke and Tony. I think the identity for the Dallas Cowboys is easy. Feed Tony. I mean, that man Tony eating, and he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year and a future Chicago Bears. So I'm super excited about that. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Zeke. It's going to be really interesting to see, what happens with AJ Dillon and a couple other guys who might not get those opportunities elsewhere. But I think the Packers will have a good shot, especially Ryan Tannehill, according to Pride, is going to be under center. So, it's going to be fun. I'm expecting 2 pick sixes, Craig. I'm going to say that out here right now. 2 pick sixes by the Green Bay Packers. Ryan Tannehill will throw 4 interceptions in this game and negative 500 yards. So, Pride,
negative 500 yards.
Eat it.
That's kind of another factor in how Tennessee has really navigated this part of the season to this point. Tannehill was out for a couple weeks, and Malik Willis, even in that Kansas City game,
right?
They relied on Derrick Henry and so effectively throughout that game. But then when Malik Willis was in a position where he had to make throws and he had to read defenses to be able to push the ball down the field, either combination of things, good pass rush, held the ball too long, didn't make his second and third reads, whatever it was, Malik Willis showed some of the limitations that he has right now as a rookie.
Right.
But now Ryan Tannehill is a limited participant in practice as of yesterday's injury report. Likely that he's going to be the starting quarterback, assuming that he continues to have at least limited practice. So now you kind of change the dynamic a little bit potentially for Tennessee, is you have somebody in Ryan Tannehill. Maybe that changes their game plan a little bit, but that's going to be a big thing, is both of these teams can, when they do it, when they focus on it, they run the ball very effectively. So I think this is a game that we could be looking at a fairly low scoring game. I don't think this is a game that's going to get any higher than this. Is probably going to be both under the 20s.
Yeah.
I think just because of how, if Green Bay can take what they just did against Dallas and use that against Tennessee, I think they have a shot. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they definitely got a shot.
100%. Craig, check your phone. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be an interesting game. Ray, I have a question for you, sir. I had a topic today. I wanted to share it, but I got here a little late because it's snowing in the Chi. It's snowing in Chicago, but my neighbor didn't get the memo, so he's decided to mow his lawn. So I don't know what's going on at 8 in the morning in the Jimmy household. I'll just name him Jimmy. But yeah, it's pretty irritating. Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So that was great. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I was just like, all right, you do you, brother. I ain't gonna tell you otherwise. But I hope he plugs in that outlet and it's one of the last times. But it's definitely something. JJ Watts, Chicago, please. Damian, don't start with me. Don't start with me. But Ray, right now, and Craig, this was for you too. I was hoping that it's okay to talk about. The Raiders have the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft. Are you looking at Bryce Young, CJ Stroud as a replacement for Derek Carr, or are you going a different direction? Because at some point for me, I'm a Derek Carr truther. I like Derek Carr. But I also have this conversation with myself where I'm like, I don't care who your head coach is, sir. You need to start to make decisions. And you need to start to ball out and be the reason you win games despite of your head coach. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has done it for years. A bunch of other players have done it for years despite of their head coaches. And I think at some point, you get a Bryce Young, you get a Hooker, you get and that. No pun intended. His actual name is Hooker Damian. I don't want
his name is Hooker. Yes.
I don't want it because I tried to get him in Madden, and in Madden his name is bleeped out. You can't have Hooker. So I don't know how they're gonna handle that. But you got a CJ Stroud. It's gonna be interesting. But I think there's so many different directions the team could go. Do you move on from Derek Carr in replacement for a guy like Bryce Young?
Now that's a good question, because now you got the owner, who is Al Davis' son, who does the same thing that Al Davis does. The Raiders have never had a conventional pick at a certain time of their picks. Sometimes their picks are off the wall picks. So to me, I will look on the avenue looking on, because Derek Carr's been there how long? 8 years?
About 8 years, I would say, right, Craig?
Yeah.
I'd say like 2012, something like that.
Yeah.
2013.
I'll start looking on, and maybe Derek Carr might want to change the scenery.
And I'll tell you what, the only reason I brought it up is because my former Chicago Bears brother, Lovie Smith, Texans have the number 1 overall pick. Craig, do I sound crazy saying they still pick Will Anderson because they have 2 top 10 picks right now? Right now, I believe as it's constructed, Texans would pick at 7 and they would pick at 1. So I definitely think of looking at Lovie Smith and the history of Lovie Smith, that man don't give a damn about the offense, boy. He's man,
a defensive guy.
Yeah, you do not care. You're going a guy with Will Anderson or one of these great nose tackles that you have in the draft. I definitely don't think he passes it up. Especially, I'm not saying he's the truth. I'm a lot higher on Tay-Town. But Davis Mills also isn't awful. I think he's pretty solid for a quarterback. I don't think he's great, but I definitely could see Lovie hanging on to him a little bit longer than he should, because Lovie makes mistakes like that quite often. But it's definitely something I think potentially the Raiders could have both CJ and Bryce both on the board with Will Anderson in the draft.
But then again, you can look at the Texans. They can go defense all they want to, and we can hopefully get the number 1 pick next year and pick up freaking Drake May out of North Carolina.
Exactly. I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that. Right?
Hey, man.
He's not wrong, though. He's not wrong. He's valid. Or
you can wait later on in the draft and pick up a Sam Hartman.
Or here's what you could do. You could wait for Archie Manning and then just take the world by storm. And it'll be the greatest storyline.
Yeah, but Archie Manning's got to play 3 years of college football first.
Listen, he's a Manning. He can do whatever he wants to do.
It's a rule. It's a rule. You got to have 3 out of high school. Yep. So basically what happened is Sam Hartman just came out and said he is declaring for the draft. So you got Sam Hartman out there that later on, who's a willing, good quarterback as it is. He has over 100 yards passing touchdowns at Wake Forest University. He's got over 10,000 yards passing. He's a great passer. He's a great, but he's got to stay healthy. That's the problem with him is staying healthy. Then you got Devin O'Leary, who has to stay healthy. If he decides to come out at NC State, as another servable quarterback that you can use later in the pick. So you really don't have to go and get these big name quarterbacks right out. If you want to stick your defense and make them stout and get another like a J.J. Watt type deal, Will Anderson's your bet. Like Lovie Smith, he's a defensive guy. He's going to pick defense first because you can win with your defense because your defense can create short fields and you can get an average quarterback who can score a touchdown on a short field.
100%. And, Craig and I kind of talked about it. We were talking about it during the World Series show we did on the All Sports All Plays Network. Check it out. But I think one of the most interesting things, and we talked about it very quickly. It was very brief. I think it was that show, Craig. We were talking about how deep this quarterback class really is. And we were talking about Detroit. I think we had a little Detroit spat for a second with the Jared Goff situation. But it's something, you look at it right now. If Ray made a great point. Later on in the draft, you can get a quarterback. You really don't have to. If you can get a generational pass rusher like Will Anderson at 1, and then you have the number 7 to number 10 overall pick, and that pick could continue to climb. You don't know where that pick's going to be. It could end up being 2 top 5 picks. You still have Bryce Young, Will Levis, I believe is how you say his name, CJ Stroud, Tanner McGee, which I love. I love McNee's name. It's just fun to say. And then you have Hendon Hooker, who I believe, you look at what he's been able to do. And I'm a Tennessee Volunteers fan, so I'm not trying to be biased. But what he's been able to do from a mobile perspective and throwing the football with Cedric Tillman, those guys have just had an amazing connection. You could go out there, Craig. I'm not saying I'm a GM. You could go out there and end the first 2 rounds with Will Anderson, Hendon Hooker, and then you can get a guy like Cedric Tillman. And you could have that Tennessee connection, and it would be a beautiful thing. Now, I don't know if you should do it that way. If guys like Bryce Young are available, maybe don't go for Hendon. But it's definitely something right now. I think the Raiders, from that perspective, I think you got to move on from Carr, man. I think there's just too much money invested in that.
I love that you said at the end, because here's the problem that the Raiders are sitting at. Derek Carr still won't be a free agent until 2026. He has a full no trade clause in his contract. After this year, though, he does have a 1 year out, $25 million. It would be $5.5 million of dead cap against the Raiders, but not really sure how that's going to work out yet. I don't know too much about that type of a clause in his contract, if that's an agreement between the team or how that is. But if you're the Raiders, you have to either think now, if Derek's not our guy, we have to trade him somehow to someone who thinks that, hey, all we need, I don't know, we're a quarterback away type team. Those types of teams might be ones that would want to get Derek Carr.
You and I talked about it, the Green Bay Packers with Rodgers retiring. I wanted you to continue, but I think, there's these desperate conversations of like, we need to do something. If Rodgers just walks, that's a whole different world. But I wanted to ask you before you continued, when you look at the situation, we can't trade Carr. If you draft Bryce Young, and then let's say you're petty about it, and you're like, all right, we're going to start Bryce off rip. Derek will reconstruct that contract to get the hell out of there. Derek's not sitting on the bench. I think he's only 30? He's not sitting on the bench right now. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about it.
Yeah. And then there are a few other free agents, and that's what Devin's kind of mentioning here, is that there are, if the Vegas Raiders want to move on from Derek and then get somebody who they think can help them win now, there are options available. But the problem is the way that contract is constructed, you've still got 3 more years and a no trade clause. So he gets full decision of where he goes. And Damian, you say if he goes to the Lions, I'm not going to touch on that. That's not what we're talking about right now.
Yes, sir.
I don't think he would be I don't think he'd be a bad upgrade compared to Goff right now, especially if they focus on the run. Got a few weapons, but I'm not going to go down that road. So now if you're the Raiders, now your question was, do you draft a quarterback? And I think it depends on where the Raiders pick. Right now, if they're at number 2, if the Texans don't go say if they go quarterback at number 1, you have to go with Anderson at 2.
You have to go with Will. Yeah, and that was my point too.
So bad.
Oh,
the Raiders defense is bad.
Yeah, Crosby and them are just it's not what a lot of people expected, I should say. And I think, to me, they're still not the most disappointing defense in that division. I look at Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, CJ Derwin, and all these guys, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on in Los Angeles? But I mean, it's definitely something. You look at the Raiders and Crosby and company, they have some studs. They have some studs that just aren't coming together. And I think that's going to be the most interesting thing with this team moving forward, is seeing what direction they want to go. But that's why I posed the question, because you have a guy like Lovie Smith picking one pick ahead of you. And there's a reason Lovey's lost his job multiple times throughout his career, and it's because he's paying more attention to the defense than the offense. So I think it's definitely, hey, third time's a charm. All power to you. Well, fourth time's the charm, really, because he got fired out of Urbana, if I'm not mistaken. But
he did.
Yeah, fourth time's the charm. Damn.
Yeah, he got fired from Illinois too.
Got fired out of Urbana, got fired out of Chicago, got fired out of Tampa for the Tampa 2 defense, and now this is your fourth go. But that's my big question: is are you going to can you treat the dog new tricks, or is it the same old thing?
I think it depends on how much say Lovie Smith gets in the front office, because if Houston, say right now, Davis Mills, as decent as he hasn't been horrible. He's not a guy that the team can rally around as like for the fan base.
Dude.
And this is the guy you need to come buy tickets to come see.
Craig, Brandon, you know what? He hasn't publicly said it. Brandon Cooks hates this man. He hates everybody in the whole organization right now.
Yep.
I wouldn't say he hates Davis Mills, but he's definitely like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and it's something right now, you look at Damian brought it up, JJ Watt to Chicago. The fact that that's even a comment and it's realistic is insane to me, that guys like D-Hop, guys like JJ, all these guys are gone and out of the Texans organization. Deshaun Watson, which God bless that they got him out of the way. But, it's in hindsight, you look at a guy like Watson and for a fact before all those allegations even happened, Deshaun wanted out too. And let's not pretend like he didn't. Like, we're not going to sit here and say, oh, the Texans got rid of him because of this. Deshaun wanted to go. Deshaun told you he wasn't playing. Like, even the weirdo doesn't want to play for you, man. And that's one of the craziest things about it. So I think, they definitely need that generational type player that you and I have been talking about that they haven't had in quite some time, because Brandon Cooks is the next guy out the door.
Yep.
We had a couple.
Yeah, and he's been as vocal as possible without actually coming out and saying it, that he's not liking the situation that's going on. I think that's where the Texans are they're in a bind, because they have to figure out what direction is this franchise going to go. You dealt with all that Deshaun Watson stuff. You got it out of the way. Now it's, now what is
What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you, Damian?
No. It's all right. There are guys in this case to his brother. There are guys that by name he was granted an opportunity because his brother did so well at Bama. He's had spurts that he's looked really good at Maryland, but he's had a lot of spurts that he's looked really bad.
That's my thing.
He looked bad last week against Penn State.
And part of it is their scheme and their offense. That's why he looks so good.
But I want to ask you this, though, because there's a lot of – I just wrote a paper on it. It was a beautiful paper. I think I'm going to pass. But I wrote this English paper about Lamar Jackson and the racism throughout the NFL. That's not important to the conversation. But a big thing was Lamar Jackson in Arizona. And understand – or not Louisville, not Arizona. Same logo. In Louisville, and understanding That playbook is shit. The organization, respectfully, is shit. And Lamar Jackson tore it up. And my point is, when you have a generational type quarterback type class, and you take a guy who can't have his own success in Maryland, to Ray's point, if you can't have success in that conference, I don't know what to tell you. I think there's so many things where, as a college player, and Craig, you are huge on college football, and I, as is Ray, to pose this question to you guys, whether, it's the system or not, if you truly are, a top 10 pick, you are going to have success at the college level. You cannot have bad games against bad teams. If you're playing Alabama, if you're playing the Ohio State University or whoever it may be, it's perfectly. You like that, Craig? I have to.
I cringed a
It's
little
cringe.
bit.
I have to.
That's like saying that
No, I hate
you
it.
have someone says that pack phrase. You can't say
no,
it.
it's awful.
I
No,
can't
but
either.
see, because if I say Ohio State, then I get guys in my comments. It's the Ohio, and I'm like, so now
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
own the word.
You know what I say? If it's the Ohio State, where's the show at on their logo? It doesn't show the Ohio
It
State.
just says OSU.
Yeah,
I like to give the disrespect of anytime I refer to them, I just refer to them as Ohio with a lowercase o.
100%.
Yeah.
A little
So
pettiness here.
But no, it's definitely something for me. Like, I feel like, and you look at Patrick Mahomes in Texas, and you look at all these other guys that were just completely balling out. I mean, Zach fucking Wilson at BYU looked phenomenal. Mitchell Trubisky and North Carolina looked a lot better than he did in Chicago. And it's something right now, though, an NFL talent in college playing against mediocre teams, you need to ball out. And one of Tua's 5,000 brothers in the state that is Hawaii. I do believe he got hella brothers, man. But I think he's just not the guy. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he continues to develop and he becomes something someday, a rotational piece. But I don't think he's gonna live up to what Tua is.
Yeah, I think that's a really high standard that he's gotta live up to, and I don't see it either. And Maryland as a program, you can make arguments.
You could say it, Craig.
Either day. You can make arguments as much as you want one way or another, but Maryland's as a program is not anywhere near some of these other ones, and even in against the bad teams, you see some of those things that to his brother is just he's really struggling with right now. So it's possible. But yeah, so to kind of go on to that question, he said Damian brought all this on us by saying that the Texans should go after him. And that's not necessarily.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
I took
An
an
agreement
comment and it
that
became a segment.
He puts us down a rabbit hole sometimes.
He does. That's why I love Damian.
Yeah, but it's great. He definitely gives us a few talking points. That's for sure. But so at the top of the draft, though, we're talking about, should the Texans, is Lovie Smith going to have a lot of input, and are they going to go defense?
Is Lovie there? Is the question.
I
think a lot of people have the understanding of, Lovie's on this 1-year prove it deal, or kind of a, blackball situation to where it doesn't matter how good you do, no matter how bad you do, you're done at the end of the year. And I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens. But at the end of the day, man, I mean this in the most respectful way possible, because I don't call for people's jobs, man. If Nathaniel Hackett has his job going into 2023, you got to give my guy Lovey some love. Like, come on, what are we talking about? And I don't know. I'm not trying to be disrespectful on here, because I know sometimes I joke around, but there's guys out here, Josh McDaniels, who, fun fact about Josh McDaniels, started his coaching career 6-0 and has now gone on to go 7-24. So the fact that a bunch of these guys have jobs, Matt Nagy is another one of them too. Yeah, I got some facts sometimes.
Did you see the reasoning or hear the explanation of why he started 6-0?
They cheated. Now, I don't know, people 100%. A bunch of people were saying they were cheating, and I think he's the same guy who was rocking with Rex Grossman. He's the same guy who traded Jay Cutler. He's the same guy, and after a phenomenal season by Jay Cutler, which in hindsight, good for you, but at the time, you never really replaced him for quite some time. And it's
Kyle Orton, Tim Tebow, that was your
That was your, and then you rock out later on, but that had nothing to do with him because they bring in Peyton and all these other things happen. Brock Osweiler, the list goes on. Now you're at Russell Wilson, and it's just like, what is happening over in Denver? I know Nate's gonna pop in, but so I gotta chill. But Craig, it's something for me where I'm like, yeah, I think Lovey deserves the job. I do. I think Lovey is one of those guys. He is a leader amongst boys. He's a leader amongst men. He really gets the job done. He's a well-respected guy. His only knock, I think, sometimes disagrees with his coaching staff a little bit too much. But I've seen change with that. I've seen him take himself away from the offensive play calling. I've seen him take himself away from a defensive perspective sometimes as well. I see him giving it, to his DC. So I think, sorry, we went into this whole little tangent about Lovey, but it's something right now. You look at the team at the league as a whole, and I'm looking at all these teams, and I'm like, man, and a respectful knock at Dan Campbell, his first away win since being hired in the beginning of January 2021. Unfortunately, was against my Chicago Bears, where the team of firsts. We allow everybody to get their first everything. But a guy who never won an away game in over 24 plus games. The fuck are we talking about? Why are we knocking on Lovey? Like, what? There's so many different things we could say. Oh, well, Dan Campbell has Jared Goff. Who the fuck is Davis Mills? Did anybody know who Davis Mills was before in the draft? Did any Texans fan go, "Oh, that's Davis Mills"? No. I don't know.
If you look at the rosters top to bottom, Houston versus Detroit, you're going to look at Houston's roster and you see Lovie Smith's actually got a win with that. You're going, okay, like that's a lot more impressive than what Dan Campbell's not doing right now.
100%. And you know what? For a casual NFL fan, I dare you to name 5 players on the Texans right now. Please to God name 5 players on the Texans because you can't. And now, me personally, there's a couple guys that I'm really in love with, and as a former safety, there's a couple guys on that secondary that I love on the Texans, and I think they're going to be studs. But more times than not, guys aren't paying attention, and I think that's really what it is. So I don't know. I'm rocking with Lovey, but if he does pick Will Anderson, you won't live or die by that one.
Now the question is, can Lovey sell the GM to pull the trigger on that? That's going to be the question because the GM is going to be the ultimate say-so of that. And if the GM is looking at Bryce Young sitting right there at number 1, and he said, well, let's go get our quarterback now, and then we can pick up a defensive player later. Mm-hmm. But then that might set up for the Raiders at number 2, picking up Will Anderson, going with Crosby and Anderson on the 2 ends right there.
Which is disgusting.
They could be set. But then there you go. You'll keep Carr because Carr, all he has to do is hand the ball off to the running back, and they'll make silly mistakes and plays. But then you got freaking Josh McDaniels, head coach. So that could end up being terrible too. So
definitely. But my bad, Craig. Carry on.
That's all right.
Had to give some
it's
love.
Good because had to give some love, and I think that'll be an interesting scenario to watch play out. Is Houston going to stick with Lovie Smith? I think they should, depending on how this goes, like give him a shot. See what happens. You're in a position right now as a franchise. You've got a lot of holes to fill, and you can't really go wrong. I think I'm not a huge fan of always. This is a great comment. I'm not a huge fan of always going quarterback at number 1 because when you have a team like the Houston Texans who have a lot of holes to fill, I think the more immediate impact is going to be somebody like a Will Anderson, like somebody on defense. I'm always a big proponent of if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, you have 5 years on his contract. Don't expect to throw him out there and make a big impact in year 1. Those are anomalies that happen. But the Texans got a long way to go. That's going to be a big conversation for sure going into the offseason. Mm-hmm. So the last kind of NFL thing I want to touch on, I know the news that you had shown me, we'll talk about that in a minute, and then some college football as well. All right, power rankings. NFL, who's your guys' top 5 going into this next week?
Ray, you go. I wasn't ready for this.
I got number 1, the Eagles. I got number 2, the Minnesota Vikings. Got number 3, Kansas City. At number 4 will be the Miami Dolphins. At number 5, Buffalo Bills.
Damn it, Ray.
And he just jumped through that real quick.
Craig, you go next. Slow it down, Craig. Slow it down. I'm only on 3.
I would say number 5 for me. Number 5 for me has got to be Buffalo. They showed a little bit of what happens with Josh Allen. You've got the good, but you've also got the bad that comes with him. And in that game against Minnesota, first of all, what an amazing game. That was like, one of the games of the year. That's for sure. But that's kind of what you can get with Josh Allen. So I got Buffalo at number 5. Number 4, I would probably throw Miami in there. Their offense is really good with Tua. They're looking really good right now, sitting at the top of the AFC East. They're on a hot streak. I think Mike McDaniel now he might finally have that answer at head coach that they've been looking for the last few years. He's pushing all the right buttons. I think that offense is rolling, and that's probably number 4. Number 3. Number 3, the Chiefs. I had number 3, Chiefs at number 3, just because even though they are 7-2, they had a big win against Tennessee, and then it wasn't the prettiest game that they won against the Jags this last weekend. I think they're still one of the top teams to beat in the AFC. Number 2, the Eagles. Eagles losing against the Commanders. They're still a really good team, but they show a little bit of a crack in the armor as far as how you can beat them. And at my number 1 team, I had made this comment earlier in the year on this show. They're a team that's going to be, just whether it's by record, as far as like how their schedule played out, they had a fairly easy schedule. If you look at the beginning of the season, there's other teams in their division that are not anywhere near the talent level they have. Number 1, Minnesota. I think with how they've been playing right now, beating Buffalo the manner they did, Justin Jefferson is him at wide receiver. That man is extremely talented. And this is now Mike, this is for you. This is the guy right here. There you go. Number 1 on the power rankings. He went from, "Sir, I'll have your daughter home at 9 p.m." to, "This is the guy that's coming to steal your girl."
Yes, sir.
Kirk Cousins gets a lot of flack.
Well,
especially in prime time. That's a knock against him. But right now, I think their body of work, they're the best team in the NFL to me.
Well, I got one complaint with that. The Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings 24-7.
Right. But I'm saying right now in the top in this
where you got the Commanders at, Ray?
Right. Where's the Commanders? They got to be ranked ahead of the Eagles, right?
Huh?
The Commanders have to be ranked ahead of the Eagles then, right? Because they just beat them.
Yeah, but the records wise,
Oh, then that's okay. So we're making two different arguments.
If you want to go
here
with the 2 8-1 teams, you got to put the Eagles above, because the 1-1 teams have played each other. So
what's going on, man? Why is Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez naked on MLB Network right now?
Goodness.
Well, that's too much information, dude.
Mike's been.
I swear to God, it's on TV right now.
I don't have my TV on right now.
And Pete Alonso don't got no shirt on either. What the fuck is this?
What's going on in New York? But I think right now you can make the argument Eagles should still be 1, because they beat the Vikings. But based on what we saw over this last weekend, going into this next week, like I'm going to be one of those people that I'm going to give the Vikings the credit where the credit's due. And I think right now this team is arguably the best team in the NFL. When you can beat Buffalo, regardless, you can argue about the manner in which they won, but the Eagles are still one of the top teams in the NFL. Like that's I don't think that's debatable. But I'm giving credit to Minnesota, how they've played. They had to still go out and win that game against one of the best teams in the AFC. I don't think you can really go wrong with, the top 4 or 5 teams. Just preference and how you view it at this point. So, Mike, your top 5.
Which is a beautiful segue because my preference is anything without Patrick Mahomes involved in it. So I do not have the Kansas City Chiefs on my list. I do have them at 6. I do not believe in their run game. So that's one of the biggest issues for me. But at number 5, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson is showing not only is he deserving of the highest paid NFL quarterback in NFL history, but I think they've also made the right moves defensively, bringing in old friend, current foe in Roquan Smith, and a bunch of other moves that they made at the deadline. I think it's going to be really interesting. A little smaller moves, but they really are right now putting together probably one of the best Ravens offenses that we've seen since the Lamar Jackson era, outside of the MVP year. But from a strategic standpoint, they finally have their guy in Mark Andrews. Got to get healthy, but at the end of the day, we're talking about right now, and right now he's going to be coming back sometime fairly soon from the knee injury. It's going to be exciting to see a couple other guys. You have some guys that you can really believe in from the wide receiver standpoint that are putting in work. They're not the biggest names, but they're definitely guys that you could look at. Bateman, Murray, and a couple other guys are just really solid guys. I love it. I love the Baltimore Ravens, so I had them at 5. Before I say guys again, because I said that about 5 times. But number 4, I got the Miami Dolphins. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Jalen, as much as I love Jay Jettas, and I know Craig knows I love Jay Jettas, and I love Jamar Chase because he won me my first fantasy championship. But another man that helped me win me that championship is Jalen Waddle. If you're talking about he is him, Jalen Waddle is going to be one of the best wide receivers in this league in the future. And I'm super excited to see how he continues to develop. And right now, Tyreek Hill, undoubtedly, I give Tyreek a lot of shit. I tell a lot of people, and I've come on this network, I've come on a lot of shows and say he is not a good route runner. He is not a top 10 route runner, and I will still stand by that. I don't understand what's changed, but he's having a phenomenal season, an MVP caliber season with Tua Tagovailoa and Teddy Bridgewater and the other dude. I forgot what his name was, but he was in there throwing that shit for a little while. Everybody was messed up in Miami, but they're really doing a great thing right now, bringing in Chubb. They're really doing themselves a service by bringing in Jeff Wilson. I think that was one of the sneakiest picks at the deadline, really picking him up and being able to have that 3-headed monster at the running back position. So it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to develop. At 3, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I like the Philadelphia Eagles. I just, again, a big part and a big knock is, and it's a two-way street too, but the Chicago Bears are dog shit, so we're not talking about us. But I don't believe in their run game outside of Jalen Hurts. I think it's a problem. I think it's a big part of why they lost against the Commanders. A.J. Brown goes down, and now what are you going to look at? Devontae Smith, who hasn't lived up to, I was going to say all of his other former teammates, but one's in prison. So I guess, you are beating Henry Ruggs right now. But outside of other guys like that, Jerry Jeudy, you look at Jalen Waddle and a bunch of other guys, I haven't seen Devontae Smith really take that next step. And that's a big part of why A.J. Brown came in there in the first place. Goddard is nice. The team is great. I love everything about it. They still have a top 5 draft pick going into next year, which is insane. They don't even need to re-sign Fletcher Cox, who's old as dirt. They could just bring in one of the best nose tackles in the draft. But I have the Eagles at 3. They're still a great team. I'm not going to get too high, too low on that loss. 8-1, great place to be. Number 2, Craig, I have the Buffalo Bills. And I was going to put them at 1, but you got to go with recency bias. You got to go with what you've seen. And honestly, one of the biggest issues for me, and I feel comfortable, I don't know. I might never get hired anywhere ever again. But I feel comfortable saying I think Josh Allen without his arm talent is Mitchell Trubisky. And I will stand by that. And I believe that full-heartedly. I think he's a little bit more athletic. But at the end of the day, this UCL injury, which if you're watching baseball and you know anything about the game, when a guy with a cannon of an arm has a UCL injury, that can carry on for a very long time unless that's addressed via surgery or whatever the case may be. So I'm really not looking forward to seeing how Josh Allen's going to continue to try to recover from this, especially in this kind of window where, it's Super Bowl or bust for the Buffalo Bills right now. So I think it's really unfortunate. They have a great team put together. I love what the team looks like. I think they went a little cheap at the deadline. I think they could have got a guy like David Montgomery, or they could have got a guy like Kareem Hunt. Instead, they rocked with Hines because it was just the cheapest option. But, I think they have a good squad they're putting together. But at number one, it's not Kirk Cousins. It's not primetime Kirk. It is and will always forever be the greatest quarterback in Minnesota history, Captain Curtis Cousins. Ray Cruz. Captain Curtis Cousins. I mean, he ain't Kirk. He Curtis. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. You're seeing the Minnesota Vikings. I had them winning the division at the beginning of the year, and Green Bay Packers fans told me to suck one. So I want to throw that one right back at you. But I do think, in all seriousness, Ray, we talked about it. I said at the beginning of the year, and Craig was the only man that backed me up. I said I think they can go to the NFC Championship. I think they could even potentially sneak themselves into a bowl, depending on how the offense plays out. Now, the one guy right now, the shittiest guy in the world, the guy that can't sleep at night, just stays up all night staring at his bedroom ceiling or staring at some pond in his backyard. Mike Zimmer is the saltiest dude in the NFL right now, in the entire world of football, because they have the same exact roster, verbatim, of last season. Even a little bit worse. They lost a couple guys. And still, all it took was a real offensive-minded guy to change this team. And the defense looks better. Zimmer was a defensive-minded guy, came in, and, a few years they had a pretty solid defense, but as of recently, they just haven't been great. I love the Minnesota Vikings. I think they bring in Odell Beckham Jr. You got that LSU connection with Justin Jefferson. I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. You got Adam Thielen. I always forget. I think his name is Smith something. It's their tight end. Stud. You got Dalvin Cook. Yeah. You got Smith and a bunch of other guys. I love it.
And they also traded for TJ Hawkinson from Detroit.
And sorry, Craig. I forgot. My boy Hawk. Hawk, who's been balling. I mean, I ain't going to lie to you, Craig.
I just hope for his sake that he actually performs to the expectations that he did not perform in Detroit. He had a couple games where, especially early this season, multiple touchdown games, 150 yards receiving, but that's one game every 10 games for him, maybe 15.
So he had a great first game in Minnesota, and I packaged him and Travis Etienne and got Travis Kelce in fantasy. And the guy, now Travis is on a bye week, and I have Travis Kelce, and I'm super excited, and I'm rocking with it. Now I have my old fantasy team name back. It's Kelce's Killers, for anybody that was wondering. But I'm having a blast right now.
So going over a couple of the comments that have been brought up here for commenting. Devin's got Eagles, Vikings, KC, Miami, and then a tie with Baltimore, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's really turned it around a little bit. I would definitely agree Baltimore should be there. It's kind of tough because they're playing so well in offense, and they look like they're hitting their stride. They were stumbling a little bit early in the year, but they're really hitting their stride right now. I could agree. It's hard to keep them out of the top 5, but you're splitting hairs, I think.
Can I ask you this? Let's say that hip fracture is a lot more of a bigger deal than they're leading on with Jamar Chase. Are they even in the top 10 without Jamar Chase? In a playoff atmosphere.
I don't think in a playoff atmosphere they're going to get very far without Jamar Chase. They still have more, and this was a conversation that they had last year going into the season, because they should have drafted Penei Sewell. Should they have drafted Jamar Chase? Right. Chase comes out, but look at how many sacks they're giving up still. When you don't have somebody that's a generational talent like Jamar Chase at wide receiver, if you have just him and nobody else, that offensive line is going to get more exposed. Right. And then you have to rely hopefully more on Joe Mixon to have, I remember a couple weeks ago, he had a breakthrough, outstanding game.
Killed anybody who played against Joe Burrow or Joe Mixon that week in fantasy. God bless you. I think it was like
God bless
200
you.
points or something. It was something insane.
I think thankfully I avoided that.
Yeah, it was
But I
insane.
think that's a really good conversation to kind of have. Is where's Cincinnati? Without Jamar Chase,
Right.
long
Now,
term.
I do think, and maybe this is just because he's going to be a free agent soon, and I'm a Bears fan, but I do think T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1. I think it's 1A, 1B with him and Jamar. I think T. Higgins is a phenomenal talent. I think he's just in Jamar's shadow, and I don't think that's an issue. Like the way it's construed is a lot of people think just because you're not wide receiver 1 that you're a wide receiver 2. But you look throughout the league, you look at Jalen Waddle gets drafted, and then the very next year they bring in Tyreek Hill. You look at, a guy like Devontae Smith who has all the pieces in the world to be great, and they still bring in a guy like AJ Brown. You look at Stephon Diggs, you still need Beasley, you still need Gabe Davis, you still need all these, maybe not Beasley, but you still need Gabe Davis and all these other guys. You're starting to see the fluctuation of we're going to have 2 wide receiver 1s for my quarterback, because the way defenses are preparing it is you're just having a couple guys outside and on this little island at safety, and you can't throw the deep ball because those guys are out there. If you have a Tyler Boyd, a T. Higgins, and a Jamar Chase on top of a Joe Mixon, and they had CJ Ozuna last year as well, who I think was one of the biggest losses for them during free agency, was losing CJ and not really replacing that, because he's a stud. He's just stuck in the Jets organization, but they're not too bad either. But it's something I think when you take away Jamar Chase and then it's just T. Higgins, and next to that is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is a 3 on a championship caliber team, maybe 3-4 option. You look at T could be a 1, but I think next to it, you can't have a bunch of 2s and 3s next to a 1. So you need 2 1s, and I really do believe that's where they're lacking. And that's why I don't have Kansas City either, though, Craig, to be fair, because your wide receiver 1 is Juju Smith-Schuster. So I can't trust you making TikToks on the line to scrimmage when there's 1 second left in the Super Bowl.
I do think, to Juju's credit, he went in Kansas City, and you're wondering, like, okay,
great.
He's been playing great, especially the way he left Pittsburgh, and there was a lot of question marks. Is he going to be, how's he going to fit into any other team, especially if look at how Tomlin really kind of kept that organization together from people like he had to deal with Juju and AB and Ben Roethlisberger and all these really outstanding, like, weird personalities and making it all work. Damian, I got to ask you real quick. You put 2 different top 5s in here. You had the Eagles, Jets, Ravens, Miami, and the Niners. And then the very next comment, you switched it up a little bit. So either way, Jets at 2. Are you a Jets fan? Because otherwise I don't see them being in the top 5. They're having a phenomenal season. I don't see them being top 5 team.
Just Damian.
I could kind of see the argument a little bit for the Seahawks, maybe not as a top 5 team, but I think they're definitely in the argument of being in that top 10 range right now. They did lose in London against a now 2-0 post Giselle Tom Brady. But Seahawks have the 2 that way. Yep. The Seahawks are definitely an interesting.
Stay up, King.
They're definitely an interesting team. I don't know about top 5, but they've had a pretty good season too. So, but yeah, let us know in the comments. I know Devin had talked about Baltimore. Obviously, has I think a really interesting scenario with Lamar Jackson and his contract situation. It's with Baltimore adding Roquan Smith. That defense. The first game they all played together, they were phenomenal.
Right.
Like, that's the best defense they had played all season to that point. So
I think
Baltimore's
thing, and not to cut you off, but we interviewed last year on the ASAP network. We interviewed a bunch of guys on the Bengals, and I got to interview Lou, who's the defensive coordinator. And something that I kind of picked his brain about was really the lackluster names. And you mentioned Roquan, you mentioned a couple other guys that are on that defense that are, top-notch talents. The thing about the Bengals and why they tripped so many people out, to why they had the second half performance that they had in the playoffs against KC, even though they were down by a huge margin. I believe it was 20 points, something crazy. And they stuck it out, and they come back to win that game against Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, etc. Andy Reid, The reason for that is they bring in these veteran leaders that have so much playoff experience, but they are not great talents. They are just veteran guys who can hold it down. And I think that's what makes them terrifying from a defensive perspective. You have guys who it's not their first time playing. You know, you don't know what Aiden Hutchinson's going to look like. You don't know what Roquan Smith might potentially look like or what somebody else along those lines is going to look like. But these guys, you know, outside of Eli Apple, are mainly going to be some of the best versions of themselves on that day because it means so much to them, except for Eli Apple. Burnt toast. But
Burnt toast.
Yeah. That was my little segment.
All right, we'll go from we'll transition. He said the second one is real. Okay, so your second one is real.
Which one was that?
That was the one with having the Seahawks at 5.
You know what? Damian, I'll tell you what. If this was a hey, good for you list, I'm with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If this is a damn, like everybody said you were going to get the number 1 overall pick or you weren't going to be who we thought you were, that's a good list. That's a good list.
That would be. I think if you talk about most impressive teams, top 5.
It's Geno Smith is a top 10 quarterback, god damn it. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
He's
getting
looking
wild
really
out in Seattle right now. Traded Russell Wilson for Drew Lock, and now Geno Smith said, "Hold my beer." What?
And they've been a good team through the first half of the season so far, out there in Seattle. What Pete Carroll's doing, it just makes you wonder, who was really responsible for all that success that they had. So, different question maybe for a different time. But I know we got a few other things we want to get to from one rankings list to another. College football playoff rankings. The top 6 came out last night. And the top 5 didn't necessarily change. You got Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee at 5, and LSU at 6. USC is the highest ranking they've been at number 7, being 9-1. So, kind of looking forward for the top, do you guys have any issues with this top 6? Is there any teams on this list that you think, may not be making the college football playoff?
Yeah, I do.
You do. What's up, Mike?
I do. Fucking Tennessee's better than 3 of those bums up there. I don't want to hear none of that shit. I don't want to hear
saying they're better than Georgia, Ohio State, and TCU. Man,
I'm not saying they're better than Georgia, but they're definitely better than Ohio State. They're definitely better than Michigan, and I don't even know where TCU is. So they're better than TCU as well.
Texas Christian University is in Fort Worth.
Oh,
Fort Worth, Texas.
Well, they can stay on that side. Stay on that side. I don't care. Big 12. Get out of here. Tennessee at top 3, without a doubt.
Well, like I said, this list will play out after Ohio State and Michigan play. That list will play. They got Tennessee in position where they be vaulted back up into the playoffs thing.
Oh yeah,
but the question will be, if LSU beats Georgia, will they have 3 teams into the college playoffs?
I said this last week when LSU beat Bama. Now LSU is in the SEC West title picture. They made the SEC title game. It's going to be LSU and Georgia.
It's already guaranteed. They're already in it.
It's already LSU, Georgia. So if LSU can pull off a big upset, you can't keep Georgia out at that point, being undefeated going in the SEC title game. You have to put LSU in. So where does that leave Tennessee?
I think.
Go ahead.
My bad. I think a big part of it is Clemson. I think a lot rides on Clemson and how they finish out their season. They could have a couple little upsets. They could fall apart. And it really depends on looking at it from that perspective on the teams that they play. We could sneak in for a lot of different reasons. We should have had my guy on here, Randy Jowers. I wish I don't know what hold on.
You don't even know what
hold on.
What he's doing right now.
Hold on. I'm calling Randy. We're calling Randy. We're gonna have a guest caller on the show.
Call in.
Calling Randy.
Call in segment.
He ain't gonna answer. He ain't gonna answer, Craig. Randy.
But he's waiting for this. He's gonna mute himself while he's waiting.
Hey, boo.
Hold up. What'd you say?
Okay.
I said, hey, boo.
Hey, man, you on ASAP in the morning right now. Randy, really quick, tell the world why Tennessee's making it to the playoffs, baby.
Well, let me just lay this out for you right now. Strength of schedule, number 3 in the country. They got 2 top 10 college football ranked wins over LSU by 27. Beat Alabama. There's only one team that's got a better resume, and that's Georgia. Period. Ohio State, Michigan got to play each other. One of them's got to lose. USC, don't even get me started on that. Terrible resume. Garbage ass conference. Tennessee's strongest resume there is. Period.
Randy, sir, thank you for your time today. You have a great day, boo.
Peace.
That was
I
Randy
think Mike-
Jowers from In Off the Bench, baby.
Hey, a lot of respect for Randy because he came in literally. He had his notes. He was ready.
Yeah,
He was firing.
that man's ready to talk Tennessee all day.
I think Mike had that set up.
I
think he had that set
I
up.
really didn't. Randy just stays ready. He's like that. He is him.
Yeah, and so some of the great comments rolling through the chat right now. USC was a name that he had mentioned. I don't see USC getting up there either. I agree. They don't have a strong resume. That conference is pretty weak. Their best shot was Oregon, and they completely pooped the bed against Washington in that game. That was a terrible loss for Oregon.
And that's that Bo Nix comment that they're ready to play Georgia again. That was that comment that set them back.
We talked about that. Bo Nix is Bo Nix the way he was against Georgia. That's the Bo Nix you're going to see under pressure, and that's what we saw against Washington. People weren't believing us when we said that.
Yep.
And we've been saying it for weeks.
I didn't say it, but Craig said it.
But hey, I said it.
Craig
Sorry.
said it.
Sorry, not sorry.
I don't even know what's going on, but Ray said it.
But Ohio State and Michigan, I don't think both of them make it in. There's a really weird outside chance that it could happen, but I don't see it happening at all. One of those two teams is going to be out of this race. TCU, if they win the Big 12, they're in. But if they take a loss at any point, game over. I don't see them making it at all.
What would you think if you had to? Not saying you're preying on anybody's downfall, but if you had to say TCU loses a game for the rest of their remaining schedule, what game you think it is?
I got to look it up real quick.
My bad. I didn't mean to put you on blast.
The last game they could lose either Baylor or they could lose to Iowa State.
So yeah, their last remaining games. Yeah, they have Baylor and then home against Iowa State. But then the Big 12 championship is the top two teams.
So that means they have to go back.
Right now it's Kansas State, and they've already beaten Kansas State. Yeah, I think if they lose any game, it could be against Baylor, even though Baylor's having kind of a down year. TCU's been good, and they've beaten a couple of ranked teams, but I think those were a little bit inflated ranked teams. It'll be... If they lose, I think it'll probably be the Big 12 title game. If it's not this weekend against Baylor, it'd be the Big 12 title game. If they do lose, I don't think they make the playoff. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And we could see 3 SEC teams in, unfortunately.
Big T.
Yeah, when Texas Christian University TCU beat Kansas State, they didn't have Martinez at quarterback. Martinez is back now.
GBO, go Big Orange.
Yeah, that's a big key right there. Martinez being back at quarterback for Kansas State, I think will be really. Damian, your troll game is on point this morning. Because we're not even going to address
Illinois
that.
is out, man.
Illinois lost to a bad Michigan State
team.
Get out of here with that, Damian. Get out of here to that. They lost to an underperforming Michigan State team. Get out of here. Get out of here. I mean, I think the way this is playing out right now in the college football season, you're going to end up, it's very likely we could have 3 SEC teams, especially if TCU loses a game and if LSU wins the SEC title game. Now, how I think it'll play out, Georgia's going to run the table. They're going to go undefeated. The winner of Michigan, Ohio State will likely be number 2. TCU, if they lose, I don't think they'll be out if LSU doesn't win the SEC title. If Georgia runs the table and wins out, that means they got to beat LSU. LSU, a 3-loss team, is not going to get in the playoff. So TCU could still sneak in at 4. But then you'd have Tennessee at number 3.
Did Damian leave?
But if TCU loses, then you might have USC because of just Lincoln Riley alone.
100%.
That's possible, yeah. And that USC would have to play. The Pac-12 is doing the same thing where they take the 2 best teams, and right now it's a 3-way tie. You got USC at 7-1, and then Utah and Oregon at 6-1 apiece.
Well, Utah has got to play Oregon in the last game of the season.
Yeah, so that's going to play itself out right there. But just
UCLA and USC's got to play against each other too.
In classic Pac-12 fashion, likely you'll have a team like USC, 1 loss going into the Pac-12 title game. Whoever they play beats them, and now you've got the top champion for that is a 2-loss conference team. That would be a classic Pac-12 scenario.
If you're looking at it right now, like I said, if LSU does beat Georgia, you got what the committee really wanted. You got what most football really wants: 3 SEC teams against everybody else.
SEC fans would agree, yes. Everybody else would disagree.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way that this is playing out in the rankings, I think it really comes down to the outcome of Michigan, Ohio State, and the outcome of the SEC title game between Georgia and LSU. Georgia wins, LSU doesn't make it. LSU wins, we've got chaos in the college football playoff.
I mean, you look at Tennessee. They got South Carolina at Bryce Williams Stadium, which is a terrible stadium to play at. They have no parking. You have to park downtown. You might get your car towed while you're down there because you might park in the wrong spot. Like I did. You know,
I knew that shit was personal. I know it wasn't just like a random.
We knew it was personal.
Yeah, it was personal because I went to see South Carolina play because I always like to go visit all the stadiums around, and that's one of the stadiums you wanted to go visit. So I went and visited, and it says football parking here. So I park in there. Come to find out, somebody put a bogus sign up. So
fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like you shouldn't be penalized for that.
So Tennessee's got South Carolina on the road. Then they got Vanderbilt on the road, which Vanderbilt beat Kentucky, who broke the longest losing streak in SEC at 26 games. So, I mean, anything can happen in the last 2 games this season.
Yeah, anything can definitely happen in the last couple games this season. All right, we're going to round up the show. Last segment, we're going to talk some Major League Baseball because some breaking news happened this morning, and I'm bringing that story up right now. Mike had sent it to me earlier. So breaking news from Jeff Passan about 9:30 this morning. All-star outfielder Teoscar. Is it Teoscar? Teoscar Hernandez traded from Seattle to the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think Mike, I know you had kind of saw that and you were just like, dude, check your phone. This is big. Mm-hmm. So Hernandez is a free agent after 2023, but it's a 3-player deal. So I guess what are your immediate reactions to this move for both teams? Because Seattle making the playoffs for the first time since 2001,
right?
Huge deal. You've got Julio Rodriguez, Rookie of the Year, and now you've got on Toronto's side. You saw some of the holes that they had. What's your immediate reaction to this trade?
I think, you look at it and it's an insurance thing. I think right now, I love George Springer's game as a whole, but you really need some young guys out there that could really do it. And I think Teoscar is one of those guys that can really play baseball at an elite level. I mean, you look at his stats from 2020 to 2021, kind of had an off year from a batting average standpoint this year, but everything else was pretty relatively the same. 30 years old, it's an interesting age, especially from the Dominican Republic. That was for pride. But it's something you need to take in consideration that that's a lot of guys' primes is ages 27 to 30. So right now, I feel like this was a great move for the Toronto Blue Jays. I didn't really see. I'm still trying to see what they gave back.
Yeah, I
But
got it right here. It's
Toronto.
so got Eric Swanson and Adam Mako. So it's a right-handed reliever and then a pitching prospect.
A lefty pitching.
Yep,
I
a
mean,
left-handed.
they're definitely what the fuck. They're definitely going all in. I wouldn't have traded arms, but that's definitely something Seattle desperately needs. But it's also something Toronto really needs. I think right now, you bring in another bat to ensure a kind of performance like they had against Seattle, which ironically, like Craig, I would not be trading with Seattle right now if I was Toronto. I would be like, fuck y'all. I ain't rocking with you. You ruined my whole playoff bracket. Not rocking with it. So, but I think it's a great move all around. I think you have guys like Kirk, obviously an all-around catcher who I said to everybody at the beginning of the year was going to be one of the best catchers in the game, and he was. I was being a little biased, but he was. You have Bo Bichette, you have Vladdy, you have George Springer, you have all these other guys, and I think adding Hernandez is going to be a huge part of that offense. I still think Toronto, and along with Seattle, does need to bring in a lot of bullpen arms. They are not good. They are not good, any of them, for the most part, except Kirby's pretty solid. Kirby Yates is pretty solid for Seattle. But outside of that, I mean, they both need a lot of help from a bullpen standpoint. But this was a great move in the right direction for Toronto. And you did say it's not a long-term thing. So going to be 32, 31 years old at some point. You cut ties, going to be perfectly fine with that. And they got a lot of prospects too.
Yeah, and one of the things for Seattle in this case, they're trading. They get Hernandez, and you mentioned he's 30 years old, free agent after next year. His slash line was 267, 316, 491. He had 25 home runs and 6 stolen bases. He had a 2.8 WAR. But really, why this move was made is there's rumors that the Mariners are going to trade Jesse Winker in the offseason, and they don't know what they're going to do with Mitch Haniger, who's a free agent. So you're basically, like you said, it's insurance for the Mariners that they could bring in a guy who could play that corner outfield spot. Right. And then in case they lose both of those guys, they could bring up Jared Kelenic back from the farm system.
Yeah.
So really just a potential, if these guys don't come back,
right,
we got this. But if they do come back, we got extra insurance in the outfield.
I do think Seattle needs to do something, though. And that's an obvious statement, but I think if they don't do this the right way, then Seattle is not going back to the playoffs, despite still having Julio and having a great pitching arsenal and Castillo and all these other guys. I still think they are going to lack depth, and that is going to show. If you, God forbid, something happens to Julio Rodriguez or somebody else, one of your starting pitchers, it's going to be a very rough season for them. So instead of taking a step back, I hope they take a step forward. You mentioned a couple prospects that they could potentially bring up that have shown time and time again that they're not really ready. Another guy as well, Kyle, is one of those guys. I'm still waiting to see what he's really going to be and to see, what he could, a lot of people thought Kyle was going to be what Julio is now. And that's right. One of the biggest issues. So I think really just getting an understanding of what your future outfield is going to look like, what these guys are capable of doing. It's going to be interesting, but I do think they're all going to be in on guys like Aroldis Chapman and a bunch of other guys who are probably going to be on the cheaper side, but still got a little heat left in them. And any Yankee fan still telling me that Aroldis Chapman's coming back to the Yankees is crazy. They don't want him. They don't want him. Like it's not the Yankees. It's the fact that they don't want him. That has nothing to do with the Yankees and Aroldis Chapman. But I definitely think both teams are like so similar to me, and that's the craziest part.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned that Seattle kind of bringing up some prospects that between the Castillo trade and this trade. So Mako was the 8th best prospect according to Baseball America through the halfway point of last season. So not only did they give up 3 of their top 5 prospects, and now they're giving up a top 10 prospect, they've kind of gutted the top half of their system to go all in to try to push for a championship.
Which is why, I kind of made I was kind of like, I'm not gonna kill you. because you got to make moves in order to be in this position right now, for especially in the market like Toronto. You and I have talked about it. It's not the greatest. It's not the easiest, especially with all the road games and COVID and everything else that transpires through that. But Craig, did they fuck up?
I think if you're the Mariners, and I had said this back when they traded for Castillo, you and I are on the same page with this. The market that Seattle is, your window to win is not, it's usually really, really small. So I don't blame them for trading away top prospects to get guys they think are going to fill holes. The problem is look at what I'll take my Tigers for example. When they had their window where they made 2 different World Series, they traded away prospects left and right to try to go all in, but it didn't work. They didn't get a title. And now this is what they've been dealing with for the last number of years.
I know that's right, Craig. Tell me.
Right.
Tell me, Craig. Tell me what happens. What happens when you trade all your prospects and the players you get are shit? What happens?
Yeah, you tell me. We're in the same boat. But you guys won a championship. What I'm saying is that for the Tigers, that's when it doesn't work out. Like, a lot of things have to go Seattle's way for them to win a title, especially when you got Houston on that in your own division. It's an uphill battle. Right. So I don't blame them for going all in. The problem is the ramifications of that. Mm-hmm. You're going to feel them for probably the next 10 years.
And I think that's the conversation. I think if you make this move, and I'll take the Chicago Cubs as a perfect example. You have Aroldis Chapman, at the time, one of the greatest bullpen closing arms to ever do it from a velocity standpoint. I mean, one of the best. Cubs needed it. And it was the crucial pinpoint to why we won the World Series in 2016. Now, when you trade Dylan Cease, who is currently top 5 in the Cy Young candidate, and Eloy Jimenez, who's cracking home runs like I crack beers on a Sunday morning, for Jose Quintana, who's been on 5 teams since, it's one of those moves where you're like, okay, like we messed up. Now, from Toronto's perspective, and obviously it's an obvious statement, but when there's guys potentially like not Jose Quintana, what am I talking about? Like Shohei Ohtani, who's potentially available, and you gut the entire roster and maybe even top of your starting rotation for a guy like that, I get it. If you want to bet on Hernandez, I think you'll live or die by that.
Yep.
You traded a top pitching prospect.
I agree.
And the way they've been, Alec Mahona, I forget how to pronounce his name.
Malone.
How you say it?
I say it Malone. The H is silent.
The H is silent? Well, I didn't know. But, the way they've been producing.
I could be dead wrong, too.
No, you could. And that's all right. It's all right. It's showing our knowledge right now. But in all seriousness, the way they've been producing pitchers in the minors for Toronto, I have to give my hats off to them. Like, they have been outstanding. They have been outstanding at producing pitching talent. So you just gave away one of the best pitching prospects in baseball, at least in Toronto's pipeline. And you look at it and you're like, for a 30-year-old who's going to be a free agent after next year, who just came off of one of his worst years in the last 3 years, it's hey, man, do what you got to do. But Craig, it's a free agency, baby. So they could easily bring in Jacob deGrom, and no one's going to give a fuck about this pitching prospect. So that's the beauty of it.
No one's going to care.
I don't know what the plan is. This move could be the first domino to many others that follow. Justin Verlander. You can have guys like Jacob deGrom, Carlos Rodon. The list can go on and on of guys they could potentially bring in. Probably could fleece a couple guys off the Cubs because that's just what we do now, apparently. But it's going to be interesting.
Well, Drake Gum's camp came out and said that he wants $40 million a year.
And you know what? Ray Cruz?
For 4 years.
You know what, Ray Cruz? I'd give it to him. I can't even say what I was going to say. Not only would I give him that money, other things as well. Pause.
Oh, God.
Resume.
So that's kind of the last few minutes here of the show. We've had a few moves already. Free agency started Thursday, 5 p.m. You had also some qualifying offers that players could either accept or decline. A few of those guys accepted qualifying offers. Jock Peterson accepted the offer from
really?
from the Giants. He did.
Wow.
He accepted the qualifying offer from the Giants. Martin Perez accepted his qualifying offer from Texas. But then we've also had a few free agents sign. One of them being your boy, Anthony Rizzo, going 2-year deal with the Yankees. But I believe there is an opt-out after the first year at a lesser salary.
Tony, proud of you, Tony. $20 million a year, 40 schmackaroons. Gonna get the gabagoo. Proud of you.
So with the free agency, the qualifying offers being extended, you had trades that happened. Tuesday was the deadline to make some of those moves. The Rays traded like 4 different players out. One of them going to your Chicago Cubs, Mike. But now, so with some of these names, what are we? Who's the first name, or I should say the biggest name to go first? Who's the biggest name that's going to go first in free agency?
Dansby Swanson.
Dansby?
Yeah, I'm rocking with Dansby. I think, and you know what? This one's from my brother Ray Cruz. I think the way Atlanta has handled themselves from a front office standpoint has been so professional, and they're taking care of their guys, and they're really trying to show, listen, we want you, the same way with Austin Riley, the way with Ozuna, locked him up very early in his career, kind of screwed him over, not going to lie, Ray. They screwed over both Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzy financially. They could have got a lot more. But play the game. Shouldn't have signed the contract. But you know, they're really good at locking up their guys. And I think right now, Dansby Swanson's in a situation. And Ray, I mean this in all respect, out of all of the free agent shortstops, I don't think he's going to be the one that's like, I want the most money, because he understands his value. Out of all of them is probably out of the top 4. And I actually just wrote an article about it for Overtime Heroics. Definitely check that out. My guy Craig Campbell put me on. But you look at Correa, you look at Trey Turner, you look at Bogarts, and then you look at Dansby Swanson. And out of those 4, I probably take Swansby last. And that's just it's no disrespect. You know, he's got the Gold Glove. He's got a 1 All-Star appearance, a World Series championship. But out of the 4, I think he's going to be the easiest to be able to sign. I don't know if someone's breaking in my house or the garbage man is here, but we'll find out. It's cool.
We'll find out in a minute.
Yeah,
so Ray, from your perspective, being a Braves fan, you know, Dansby Swanson is now a free agent. Is that a spot? Like, are you wanting the Braves to go after Dansby, or should they try to take a run at another free agent, or you know, is it something in the farm system maybe they can place?
Ray, before you go, Nate, if you're in here and you're watching, I want you to record this, because this whole time I've been talking, Ray's been smiling like menacingly, and whatever he's about to say is about to be fucking nuts. So I want somebody to clip this, because Ray moments are rare. So I want it clipped.
Well, if you're looking at Dan Swanson, the only thing is the Braves don't want to deal with his agent, his agent, period. His agent is the same agent that had Freeman, which came out in June of last year, that the Braves did a qualifying offer, matched the offer that the Dodgers gave him, plus up to $1 million.
Right.
Well, his agent told Freeman a story. So that's why Freeman went into the Braves. When he came back with the Dodgers, he went to the Braves front office and asked him why they didn't sign him. And they told him his agent screwed him over. That's why he fired his agent. He warned Dansby about his agent. So the Braves don't want to deal with his agent. That's the problem right there. And Dan Swanson don't want to change agency. So the Braves don't want to deal with his agent, period, because what they did with Freeman. So we might see Swanson leave, and we might see the Braves go after Trey Turner. So
Trey Turner wouldn't be a bad option as well. I know that's a conversation that the around the Dodgers organization. You know, are they going to stick with Trey Turner? Or are they going to try to go after somebody like a Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts? There's definitely a lot of potential movement in Major League Baseball. Carlos Correa had the 1 year opt out with the Twins. Is he going to go back to Minnesota? Is he going to? I know he's trying to get the most amount of money possible, so I don't see him going back to Minnesota. I would likely see if say for instance, Judge doesn't go to the Dodgers. Say he goes back to New York. I would not be surprised to see the Dodgers throw the bag at Carlos Correa.
Is there, man, I hate when we talk about this because it upsets so many people. With 2017, is there bad blood that why that wouldn't happen? Like from a fan base, as a front office, you go, the entire state of California hates this man. Why do it?
Yeah. I
go back
think
home?
that would have to be in consideration.
It has to be. And I think what I'm hearing right now, I've heard from a couple people, Trey Turner to the Chicago Cubs is the first one, but the only person saying that is me. So it's, but
he's speaking it into existence.
Yeah, I just be throwing shit out there. I have burner accounts and I reply to them and I'm like, oh, great take. But in all seriousness,
good job, Kevin Durant.
I do see a lot of rumors about Trey Turner potentially going to Philly and Philly having that final piece, really needing that. I mean, final piece. They still need a fucking bullpen. But it's another offensive weapon that they can bring in. And defensively, they lacked a lot at the shortstop position. You and I watched that during the World Series. And I'm oddly enough, Craig, I don't know how you feel about it, Ray. You either. I've heard a lot of Carlos Correa getting a bag, like a legitimate bag from the Baltimore Orioles, and I don't know. It's kind of out of their character. I mean, the last time they paid somebody a lot of money, the guy did not have a single hit for like 3 years. So I mean, it's it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think they're at a point right now when you look at Aldi and you look at all these other young prospects that they have coming up. They have a phenomenal catching regime. They have some pretty solid pitchers coming up through the pipeline. I think they need that veteran leader that's still platinum gold glove winning defense. That's still one of those guys who has World Series experience, whether it's tainted or not. It is World Series experience. It's something right now where, these guys, even Bogarts, part of a lot of people don't even realize his rookie year, he won a World Series 2013 and then 2018 as well. Another conspiracy with that one, but there's conspiracies all over the place. But I think so many of these guys have so many leadership qualities, and Trey Turner with Washington and still having the, literally a death lineup. They were death row in the Dodgers, and that just fell apart. But and whoever anybody gets, even Swansby, shout out Ray Cruz because they won the World Series last year. Every single one of these guys brings so much to potentially, the Detroit Tigers. You look at the Chicago Cubs, you look at the Baltimore Orioles. I could see a lot of teams that are rebuilding really throw a bag and really throw the length of contract that they're looking for to get some of these guys.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, based on last year and how the free agency period played out, and you had guys waiting for a while to sign contracts. I think are we going to see that play out again this year? It kind of remains to be seen, but some of these guys are just waiting. They're all playing a game of chicken. Who's going to sign first so that way I can try to one up that contract?
See, I would sign first. I wouldn't give a fuck.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think maybe you'll see a guy like Dansby Swanson or maybe even a Trey Turner sign somewhere that they think they can win or it's a best fit. Right. And then you're going to have Correa's going to wait. Correa's going to wait because he wants to get paid as much as humanly possible. You
know why I have a problem with that, Craig? Guys will complain about their teams not performing well. When the Dodgers offered you a contract, the Yankees offered you a contract, and the Astros offered you a contract, and you waited to get the most money, and then you fucking end up in Minnesota. So because everybody else got, I don't feel bad for you. That's what happens when you play the game of waiting. That's what happens when you wait too long. I mean, it is what it is. And it's like you said, it's just like the game of chicken. I call it Frogger because I feel like you jump out in front of somebody and then you just get annihilated by another offer. But it's definitely it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think the first guy to me, Craig, mine is Swansby. Who's yours?
I think the first guy to sign, I think it might be Trey Turner. I think it might be Trey Turner. I think just even if he doesn't go back to the Dodgers, I think that might be a target for you mentioned Philly because they had Stott at shortstop. I was going to say the other spot he might go. I wouldn't be surprised if he lands in Boston.
Craig, what the fuck, dude? I need somebody else saying it other than me.
Chicago Cubs.
Oh, there it is. Clip it. Clip
There
it.
Flip
Craig,
it real quick.
You know what's I wanted your guys' take. I know we got to get out of here, but Craig decided to leave baseball for the last topic. Don't know why, because I'm not leaving. But I'll be here all day. But in all seriousness, I think Jacob deGrom could go first as well. And I think that because there's guys like Carlos Rodon who are trying to see what he can get out of the market. There's guys like Justin Verlander who kind of really don't care. But Jacob deGrom has a premise right now. He has the blueprint. This is what Max Scherzer got. This is what I want. He's not waiting to see what other pitchers are getting because I'm better than you. I'm 10 times better than you. I'm one of the best pitchers of this generation. And I believe I am worth $40+ million like you alluded to earlier. Right now, he already knows what his market price is. He already knows what he wants. And he's not waiting for other guys to fall to get that because Max Scherzer was the same case. It don't matter at the end of the day. He's Max fucking Scherzer. You're going to pay him. And that's what it is. So I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think, that's why you might be able to go first is because teams understand this as well. This is Jacob deGrom. Very rarely does he become a free agent. Very rarely is there trade talks for a guy of that caliber. And, it's sometimes it's the biggest names that are the easiest to sign because you already know what the market value is for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna bring more information as these free agency signings play out here on the All Sports All Plays Network. But in order to find all that content from here at ASAP in the morning and with all the shows that this great panel is a part of, Mike's got Mike on the mic. He's part of Bullshit. And then Ray's got College Football Breakdown, Jags Nation. To find any and all of your favorite shows on the All Sports All Plays Network, follow us on social media. You can find us. We're live this morning on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and live on the Fox D Network, Roku app, and Tiki Live. So you can find us on YouTube, search ASAP Sports Network, on Facebook at All Sports All Plays, on Twitter at ASAP Network 1, and on Twitch at ASAP Network. You can like, share, comment, subscribe. We're almost at 1,000 subscriptions on YouTube. So thank you to everybody that has subscribed on that channel. We're at 3,500 followers on Facebook. So thank you to those that follow there. And you can find us on all those platforms. And, we have great content that comes out day in and day out on ASAP Network. But with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're just after 12 o'clock. We've got some great stuff coming up later on this afternoon. The Afternoon Blitz, Easy Money, just to name a few shows. But for Mike Hughes and for Ray Cruz, I am Craig Campbell. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning on ASAP in the morning, 10 a.m. here on the All Sports All Plays Network.
Peace out.
Peace.
All Sports All Plays. Yeah. All Sports All Plays. All Sports All Plays. 365, we making up plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.